there's a strong belief that diverse teams make for more effective teams, but only if that diversity is managed really well, and only if the diversity comes with inclusion.
So, Shuvo, we've been talking for a while, but really looking forward to this conversation. So, wanted to start by asking you, tell us a little bit about, what you do at Google, and why do you do what you do?
Okay.
Your story.
Yeah, sure. So what I do, until very recently, as of a couple of months ago, I lead an organisation called the Google Digital Academy, which provides a whole bunch of education and transformation programs for our external customers. They're all going through some kind of digital transformation, and we provide a service that helps them to learn about digital marketing, to learn about business transformation, to learn about deploying digital tools in their organisation. And latterly, as of the last few months, my scope has expanded a bit, and I'm still having the Digital Academy roll into me, but we've expanded to a broader thing called customer programs, which encompasses the Digital Academy, but also how we orchestrate the Academy and lots of other services from Google around our customers' needs. So yeah, it's an exciting journey, continues to be so.
Fascinating. So what would, when you look back in terms of your sort of track record and your role as a leader in the run up to setting up the academy, tell us a little bit about that. I mean, what were some of the leadership lessons that you learned along the way as you set up the academy, which has become an institution within Google?
Yeah, what are some of the lessons learnt along the way? I guess the first one I would say is around everything is possible. I say that because this didn't exist before, and having the academy, having actually this space, was all an idea. And it started with a pitch to our European board. It was simply a concept, first of all, and arguably, when you have an idea which doesn't exist, and you don't, often it's easy to think in a large organization that you can't change things. But this was an occasion when, we saw a need in the market. I pitched it to the European board, and they said, that's a good idea. And before I knew it, there was a resource allocation, there was a budget, and it was just me and an idea, and had to create something from nothing. So I guess lesson one was you can create something from nothing. A big idea can go far, and you can create change. But then the second lesson is be careful for what you wish for.
Because you get it. Or you make it happen.
Absolutely. Because actually making this happen has probably been the hardest leadership lesson of my life. Especially when you don't actually know what structure you should set up, what mission you should set, the metrics you should measure, the people you should bring in. You're inventing it on the fly as you go. And the people who then follow you into battle trust you.
Yeah.
And in a large organization like Google, especially when you're servicing other teams, they who don't necessarily understand the service that you're bringing, nor necessarily want it or perceive the value in it, it can be quite a tough uphill battle to try and demonstrate what is the purpose of this team, of this organisation. Why have they been granted all of this resource? What is it for? And don't we do this well enough ourselves? There's lots and lots of questions that get asked in the early days when you're trying to do something new, and especially in a large organisation. That can be hard, they can be bruising, and particularly when your people are exposed to that, it can feel quite a rocky time, actually. And I don't think I had anticipated all of those moments when our very existence and purpose would be questioned the way that it was. and actually getting through those first couple of years was really, really quite hard.
I mean, just want to come back to that, because I think sometimes it's very, once you've gotten over that phase, it's very, it's almost you forget looking back and thinking about what did I learn about myself. So what was it about you, when you kind of dig deep into what kept you going at that time? What were some of the things that you consciously or perhaps at that time unconsciously did that helped you get over the line? Because, brand like Google, it's your own credibility, you don't want to get things wrong, What was it that helped you get over the line as a leader?
So to help get over the line, I think it was, for me, it's important to have a really, really strong mission and vision in mind. One that fitted what Google is trying to do as an organization with what me and my team were trying to do as a team.
That alignment, yeah.
So I could see really clearly that there was a strong link between what the company needed and what we were doing. So compelling that it was very difficult to ignore that. So that kept me going. I think another thing was just...
Even though others couldn't see it.
Even though others couldn't see it, for me it was so clear, and actually for my team, as they came on the journey, it was also really clear to them as well. So that belief in it's the right mission, it's the right vision, we will get there, it's just time, keeps you going. I think the second thing is belief in the capacity of people to grow. Because, when you start something that's brand new and you have to recruit fast, you bring new people in, and you know what? As much as everyone believes in the mission, not everyone can do what they need
at that stage.
People to do. But that doesn't mean they won't grow into that. That doesn't mean they can't learn to do it. It doesn't mean that you can't build something that genuinely does give them a vehicle to create something amazing. So you have to believe that it's not just that there's a destination that we can get to, but you have to believe that the people that you have the capacity to grow and to build together and to learn to do new things so that you will get there eventually. And even though they themselves might doubt it, you almost have to have more faith in them than they have in themselves.
Because they're looking to you.
And actually their faith in you as a leader becomes critical. For them to keep going on the journey, they have to know that their leader has confidence, not just in the mission, but in them.
You talked earlier about the excitement of transitioning to a slightly different role. So tell us a little bit about that, and really keen to learn from you, Shuvo, in terms of, what does transitioning mean at a kind of international, global level, at a different scale, at a different level, and what are some of the challenges, again, at a leadership, as a leader, when you're going through that kind of journey of transition?
So transitioning into something which is of bigger scope, greater complexity, more international, etc., always brings lots of new challenges. I'd say complexity is one of the biggest challenges that we have. The team has to grapple with how do we educate our customers across so many different product areas, across all aspects of marketing strategy, many different types of customers across multiple markets. And as you transition into doing something like that, there comes a point where however much feedback you get about what does your organization need to do, what are the needs you need to deal with, and inevitably the feedback you get will always be contradictory.
To what you're trying to do.
You hope that there'll be, by gathering insight from multiple different stakeholders, you'll be able to tease out some themes,
Yeah.
and
Clarity,
based on those themes there'll be some clarity, and based on that clarity you shall build a plan. And if only it was so simple, but it's just not. It's just not. And I think allowing oneself to let go a little bit and just allow for the fact that there will always be a balance between what your stakeholders are asking for and what you just think is right. And there's a confidence in trying to balance out the two.
So as you're going through this transition as a leader, you know, as an individual, but you're also, I mean, you are in this unique position because you're with, you know, with Google, which has a global perspective on things. What do you see as some of the big kind of trends that are likely to affect the world? You know, what are some of the big, like you said, you know, spotting the external sort of trends and mega trends? What would you say some of them are? I mean, we'll probably expect you to say a few things because you're with Google, but very interested to hear.
Well,
given what your role is, what you think they are.
So, if I talk about like the core of what we do and what are the big themes that we are taking to our own customers, you know, obviously every organisation we're dealing with is going through some kind of digital transformation.
Yeah.
So that's like a mega trend.
Yeah.
Now within that, there are some aspects that, say, at board level, for a CEO and their direct reports, we see really common, time and time again. So one is, how does digital help to drive greater customer centricity? Like what do you do with technology that enables you to connect with customers better? That's a big theme. Then there's another area around big data, artificial intelligence, machine learning, all of this kind of stuff. What you would expect from Google, because you know we have huge amounts of expertise, you know, under the roof here, and we try to unpack that as best as we can for our customers and
applying some of that to solve problems
and help them figure out like what problems is it that they have not yet solved that could be solved with their data, with the application of AI and machine learning and that sort of thing. We try to help them unpack that. That's the stuff that you might expect to hear from Google. Equally, there's lots of things that organizations are grappling with about how they operate, where we're trying to almost self-reflect on what has Google done that can help. You know, how do we operate ourselves? So for instance, people operations. Like, how do you do performance management? How do you get great performing teams? We have a point of view on that, and actually, not surprisingly, we have a point of view on data-driven people operations, and how you aggregate all of the data that you have about people to actually inform the decisions we make and the constructs we build. You know, there's a huge survey that looked into what are the different aspects of high-performing teams at Google. And again, very data-driven, lots of surveys, lots of data, and they came up with a top few lists of things. And, you know, you might expect it might be something to do with great strategy or vision or that sort of thing, whereas actually the number one factor that we came out with at Google was psychological safety.
Wow.
Like the single most important thing that determines the success of a team and whether they deliver ROI, grow businesses, whatever it might be that they are trying to do, has been psychological safety. And it's just been a theme across the organisation. So even though that was something that we've done for Google internally, we try to share that transparently with our customers as well, and just provide that as stimulus to say, well, this has been our journey as an organisation, and facilitate them through reflection as to, you know, what from that they can use for themselves, and how what learnings there might be that they could bring back to their own organisations as well. Same thing around culture of innovation. Same thing around vision and leadership. You know, we have a point of view about these things inside of Google, and we try to share that as transparently as we can, you know, for the sake of benefit of our customers as well. So, you know, these are the big areas that we see almost every company is grappling with. and particularly how do you
more or less
and how do you grapple with that in a digital world is obviously like the lens that they often come to Google with. And in some ways these things are timeless. Vision and leadership, people. That's not a new topic. However, how you deal with those topics in the context of fast-moving digital change is something that we're always trying to make sure that we bring the latest, greatest thinking to that.
I mean, you talked about timeless, and you talked about technology. I mean, I can't believe I'm suggesting this sitting at Google. Just to put the technology piece aside, you talked about psychological safety and the need of that. Things like, how tough or resilient leaders are, or how inclusive they are in terms of how they're engaging with people and teams. How important do you think these are still as traits in leadership to deal with some of the issues that you've just highlighted and scoped out? Do you talk about these at Google? Do you see that as part of your own transition?
It's possibly the biggest leadership topic of the moment, honestly. Diversity, inclusion, resilience, managing through change. These are things which, as the world keeps accelerating, and my goodness, it goes fast at Google, these things become more and more important than ever before. There's a strong belief that diverse teams make for more effective teams, but only if that diversity is managed really well, and only if the diversity comes with inclusion, and only if each individual, regardless of their background, feels able to contribute their best and bring their best selves to work. Easy to say, really hard to do. But actually, during times of change, and if anything, I would say that the rate of change just keeps on accelerating. Being able to harness those differences becomes almost sort of business critical. So yeah, I mean, that's an absolute critical topic for us. And honestly, I think it's one which Google is grappling with. And like every organization, these are human challenges, and technology can't necessarily, to your point, technology can't necessarily solve all the human challenges. Sometimes we need people
bringing it back to the human.
And it's about the culture that we encourage. So and culture is created by every single person. You'll see on I don't have my laptop here, but I carry a sticker on it which just says # it's up to me. And the hashtag "It's Up to Me" campaign is something which we are rolling across Google globally to speak about how do we create a culture of inclusion within the company, and how that culture will not just come from leadership. It must come from every individual. In other words, it's up to me. And that culture only comes from when we talk about it, when it's important, when it's on everyone's agenda, when you have
behaviors,
an objective, a key result which is related to that. When you spot the challenges and then you deal with those quickly, and so there's a whole sequence of different behaviors that we have to keep on working on, and that's why it's probably the top leadership topic of the day.
It's fascinating. I was speaking at an event last week, on a panel around inclusion, and someone said something. You must have heard this, but it's just so important to keep reminding ourselves about the journey. That diversity is about counting the numbers in a way. That's what it's been.
Yes.
But given where the world is and everything that you've talked about, Shuvo, and how you lead, it's about making the numbers count.
Yes.
Even in a place like Google, which one can forget that it all comes down to that. How do you make people feel?
Yes.
And whether you make them feel like they belong.
Exactly. And making people feel like they belong is often in all of the micro moments that happen every day. You can have a big campaign across the organization, but you know what? It boils down to what happens when 5 people sit around a table at a meeting, and how does the chair of the meeting behave? How do they draw people in? What happens before and after that moment? Who do they speak to? One of the biggest things that I have tried to do much more in the last few years very kind of consciously is, I call it Shuvo's listening tour. I just, essentially it's just one-to-ones with every single person in my team. But, you know, when you have a decent sized team, it can take a long time to do that. But nonetheless, you know, whether it takes a quarter or 6 months just to speak to every single person, I do try to make time and sort of listen with no particular agenda other than to say, how are you, what's happening, what's changing for you, what's changing in your role, what do you observe changing in the team around you, what's working, where are the interactions working, what's not working, what are the challenges you see in how we're interacting, and importantly, and what can I do as a leader to help you in whatever challenges you have. All these little things that change as a consequence of listening, I think makes a big difference. But it's not a battle that you win in overnight, a week or even a month or even a quarter. It's a battle which I think takes quite a long time, a year or 2 or 3 years even, with just consistent listening, acting, and importantly, the biggest learning I've had, I think, of this was that I think I was doing lots of listening, lots of acting, but I wasn't doing enough communicating about what actions had been taken. So even though you might change something about your team, your operations, or whatever, unless you're communicating very proactively, we heard this, we've changed this,
we've done this.
This is why. And this is what we hope will come of it, and let's review it again, and make sure that the communication around that is really clear. It's very easy for lots of change to happen and for folk not to realise, even though it's done with the best intent. So it's not just change, it's also communication about change, which is as important as the change itself. And that's also something I'm still working on.
Well, thank you so much. We could go on forever, but I'm sort of very conscious of time, but really appreciate it, Shuvo, and thank you so much for not bringing it back to just technology, but the kind of human side of being a leader and acknowledging the challenges and the importance of listening and connecting at a one-to-one level, which I think wherever the world is, whatever the challenges are, will never go away. So thank you very much.
Thank
really
you.
Appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks.